Hello, everyone. We're joined today with author Ella Summers, and she's done her amazing special edition books with us at Bookvault. And we're just here today to ask a few questions and get to know this author a bit more. So, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey as an author and how you came to make your beautiful special edition collection?
Oh, yeah. I started out always wanting to write, always tell stories, and then I interestingly moved around a lot when I was younger. So, as you can tell, I'm from the US. So we moved around a bunch of places, and then later, when I was, after university and all that, I moved to a bunch of different countries. So I've actually lived on 4 continents.
Wow.
And I feel like that is some of where the inspiration comes from, experiencing different, especially when we talk about fantasy. We have a lot of different things that are kind of, for us, different, but might be for other people. It helps you get an idea for fantasy, how things could be.
Yeah.
So, I was doing that, moving around a lot of places, and including Australia. And then I was publishing, I think the first book was around 2015, so this would be my 10 years anniversary.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
And I don't know how many books at this point. I think we're getting close on 40 at this point.
Wow.
So
40.
Well, we're getting close. I have to count. We're getting close.
Wow, that's an amazing achievement, though. Congratulations. And so we're going to talk about your special editions, which you signed with us today at Bookvault. And what inspired you to write this series in particular and to write about magic-filled worlds? And what draws you to the fantasy genre?
Well, those are a few questions, I guess.
Sorry, that was a lot. We'll break it down. What inspires you to write the fantasy genre,
Fantasy, okay. Yeah. So I've always been into, out of this world. So maybe, as I said earlier, it has something to do with going around a lot of different places and experiencing different things. So I think that is a lot of that, like what things could be. And I always liked fantasy and science fiction and speculative fiction where things are different.
Yeah.
First, now I guess I'll move to the Legion of Angels, as you mentioned. Specifically about Legion of Angels, it's not my first series, and, I have other series now, but I write mostly urban fantasy, and urban fantasy is quite personal, like, stories. So you have epic and these things with these really big stories and things going on, and urban fantasy tends to be, and I'm not going to say always, but tends to be like a more personal story about, you have like a protagonist. It's often first person, and you get really into their head and whatnot. So when I was doing this, I wanted to stick with this. It's a personal story, but I wanted to make it also kind of epic and go a bit bigger. So I thought, well, angels, we need more angels anyway in urban fantasy. I feel like need those. So we have angels, we have gods, deities, whatnot. You have a lot of potential to have like one person's journey and yet still get epic in scope, because you have all these really powerful beings, and of course they have their politics and they have their whatever's going on with them in their crazy worlds, because when you have that much power, obviously there's going to be something going on, drama.
We love the drama.
Yeah, obviously. So this idea of being personal but also going large, and I thought that was the right vehicle for that, like having this, plus, as I said, I wanted more angels. And then I also wanted to try a few different things. So I had the idea they're like the gods' army, so the angels, and they must have a certain structure. And so I turned them into a military. So often in fantasy, you'll have like warriors or, whatnot. But for me, I wanted to have like a military like we have in our normal world. So I went into the research and looked at, with my military liaison, we looked into the ways that different armies are structured, and then we came up with something that would be based on the real world, because all our urban fantasy is about the real world, bringing it into, fantasy. Use that to develop how we would make that work in a fantasy world where they have special powers. So they level up, or they rank up. They get different abilities as they go up.
That's so
and different ranks. So, for instance, all the books in this series are actually named after the a bit. Well, not all of them, but the first few, sorry. So this one's the third book. It's called Siren's Song. So in that book, those are the soldiers of the third level. So when you reach that level, and that's the ability you get. So sirens, you can influence people and whatnot. So that's how the books are titled.
Wow. Well, it's amazing to hear about like all the different ins and outs, obviously the thought process and everything. There's a lot of research that goes into books that you don't always think about, like the military side. I mean, it makes sense, of course, and like how else would you get there? But it's really interesting to hear about all of those little details because not everyone will understand. But moving on though, when it comes to writing like a long running series, obviously how many books are in this collection?
So in this collection, it's, of course, you'd think it'd be an easy question, it's just a number, but it's not. So the main series is 12 books, but this special edition that I'm shipping is 13 because I have an epilogue book. So it's sort of things I'm transitioning into is like, her daughter goes to, her daughter gets older in these stories in the epilogue book, and then we're going to move on to her daughter later.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I have a 14th book, which we don't actually need because it's just the bonus content of the stories that are actually in these editions. So it's either 12, 13, or 14, how you want to see it. But
So there's a lot of different parts to it. But I think the most interesting part is how do you keep the reader engaged and interested, to follow that journey? Or do you think there's anything you do in your writing or in your marketing or, thought process with storytelling?
Yeah, so there are a few different things, and there are some truths, or take it as you will. Everyone will vary, but I think it's what you take out of what I'm going to say. I just want to preface this by this is not the only right answer because there's a danger for this. So for my genre, and I think this does still apply to a lot of genres, that what you would do or what I do is I think of a few things. One is the character.
Yeah.
So you obviously need a protagonist that people can relate to. You need someone there, so not perfect, but not like completely like you can't relate to the person else. But that, I think most people already know that.
Yeah.
So I think the next step that how I would take it is, or how I do it is, I think about the characters around them. So the other characters in the story. So there's a tendency to think it's, especially in something that's so driven by one character, that these other people are somehow just being dragged along for the ride. But it's important to realize that each of these other people has their own story. They are the protagonist of their own story, even if they're not the protagonist of this story.
Exactly.
And when you think of it that way, they have different motivations. They have different things that drive them. And they're not just, there to make the protagonist look good. They're not just there to, progress the plot randomly. They have their own things. And sometimes that's could be contrary even to what the protagonist wants. And I'm not just talking about villains. It's not like, I just go and I did this stupid thing and everyone's like, yeah, you're so great. No, you don't want that. You want people who have their own sense of self.
Yeah, of course.
And so actually I talked about the collection briefly here. A lot of these people have their own stories in the collection. Okay. So I've already thought about the story, and I actually get requests for that, like, I want to hear more about this person or this person. Yeah. So I do a lot of stories with the other characters, and they have, their own stories. Sometimes people even get their own series. I have a character who only shows up in, I think, 2 books. I would have to clarify who I'm currently writing that series.
Okay.
So not everyone has to have their own series or their own story, but you should think about everyone having their own sense of self.
Of course,
yeah. So that's how I do it. And another reason that I think that's good is it allows you moments of humor. So and that's really also important in a long series is you can't just have, you see, okay, she has swords. She has swords. She has no. Yes, she does that, but you know what else she does? She has moments of humor and like say with her family, and they all like each other, so it's not confrontational necessarily, but they're bantering, and you need these moments, and that keeps people, and it makes it feel real. It makes them like this isn't just
you need the highs and the lows.
Yes, and like these sort of in between moments where they're just having fun, and that it's not getting slow paced because they're still bantering. In fact, the banter is pretty fast, right? 'Cause it's like so that's one thing I would say, the characters, and then that somewhat relates to the pacing. What I say is that you can't just have you can't go full on adrenaline.
Yeah, of course, because then it kind of, I feel like it kind of dies it down if you just keep
Exactly.
going. There's no impact. There's no
right, because you don't appreciate the other things, and plus
Exactly.
you don't get to really know them. They're just constantly
They're just
high stress. You have a large series like this. I think you can go a few ways. You can think about, like, the characters, what I said. You can think about the plot, like I'm saying, like have a structure of, what's going to happen, like more epic stories at points that you have to hit, or preferably, do as much as you both if you want. At least that's how I feel. I think some genres it might be a little, different. So with the plot, when you start the series, you should, I think, at least think about some direction you kind of want to go. You don't need to say, I'm doing exactly this, but it's very helpful if you know where they're going.
Yeah.
Where you want to take them, and generally where the destination of where they want to go and points you want to hit. Because one good thing about this, and this also goes back into long series, and that is if you have an idea of where they're going, then later you increase the rereadability of your series, because there are hints in the early books that only become important later, and then people will reread it. So I hear a lot of people saying, when a new book comes out, they reread the other ones and they say, oh, I just realized this thing that I didn't know until I read like book 7 or whatever that became important. So you increase the rereadability of your series.
That's so true. I feel like that is obviously a tool that is used in films, literature, everything, music, albums, anything that has several parts to it. You want to link them all together somehow. You want the reader to notice those little things.
And it's satisfying for them to then notice it and feel it.
Because the first time you don't always notice it, do you? You just kind of read it as you go, and then it's not till you reread it again, knowing what's going to happen. And I bet it does provoke, like, that sense of realization, a sense of, like, oh, I knew that.
And I think that might get them a high, right? Like, oh, yes.
It's so interesting, though. Like, it's something that you don't always, like, obviously as a reader, you don't know that, oh, they've put that nugget in there. Like, they deliberately done that because they want you to think about it more, don't they?
Yeah.
So...
And it might be something super tiny, and then later you see it, and then maybe even the next time, because if you again increase the rereadability, then you're releasing books, and if they just keep rereading after each new book comes out, then they'll get more and more of these little pieces.
And also, if you're writing about different characters, they're all gonna have their own experience of that little thing.
I think it's important though you can also overplan, because here's and I mean authors, writers, whatever, we all go into often two things, like the plotters and the pantsers, and I'm definitely further on the plotter side. But with that said, I do not plan absolutely every single decision ever, because that I think kind of constricts you. So most people will probably say I'm, an OCD plotter, even knowing what, the way I do it. But I still leave it open. So I have a plan. I have outlines. I have different ways that I fill them in. But at the end, when I'm writing it, sometimes things just come up and like, that's perfect. And you know what? Because I have these, the skeleton plan of where I'm going for everything, it just nicely hangs in and connect. And so, and these things that sometimes you didn't think of it, but it connects better than anything you could have pre-planned because you have everything in there. And so one is I have this like giant cat that I never planned to be in this series. She gets a cat, and then I was like, oh, this is so great. This is of course great. And of course she's an angel, and she calls her cat Angel. And but it worked out really well, because later she gets a daughter, and the daughter's like grabbing the cat, and so it works for some like of the cuter moments. It wasn't really relevant necessarily for the bigger plot when I was planning it, but it came in later. It was just one silly example of you don't plan everything.
I think that's good though, because do you think if you did plan everything, you would miss out on those little ideas, or you might overcomplicate it?
Yeah, because the mode you're in when you're plotting might not necessarily be the way when you're actually writing it. And when you are actually writing it, just things start coming and you get in a different like flow of it, and then the stuff starts coming in, and then you're like, oh, this is so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have to be open to doing both. And of course, everyone falls somewhere else on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And some people will be like, no, plotting, that's like ridiculous or whatever. Or some people are like, yes, you must plot everything, but I don't think.
I think it's good to have a mix.
Yeah, I think it's good to find where you fit in along the spectrum and what works for you and your readers and your process and your genre and etc.
Yeah. Of course, it's all individual.
So this is just what I do, but
no, it's interesting. It's so interesting to hear about, and I'm fascinated by just the way your mind works and how you put together this series and this book. But I was going to say, how did you find the process of doing special editions with Bookvault? Like, what was your plans? And
okay, so I found Bookvault. I think I was at the London Book Fair last year, and then I saw it and like, oh, these are really great books. The quality is really nice, and as far as I know, I didn't see any other print on demand where you could achieve this quality level, and so that was a thing. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do special editions, I want them to be all out. So I basically put everything in. And I think it's been really great because the amazing details are here. I can kind of bring it up. So you see the sprayed edges, the foiling. I don't even know if you can see it on this video, but there's foiling and then got that end papers and all that can be done with. I really liked how it was doing. And what's interesting is that Bookvault is really clearly focused on quality, and it's much more of a personal process, I think, too, that like the people here actually care about the quality, and it's not like a big company where there's no real connection. So, and I think that this is really evident because I read your documentation. As if it hasn't been clear yet, I'm kind of have this like obsessive thing to know everything.
Good.
And I thought it was really useful because you mentioned a few things that are really important. And one is, the first thing is you had listed which color profile your printers use. And that means that I just can, when I'm working with bringing the files to you, I can look and see what they look like in that color file, like roughly, on the computer, set it to the right color file. And that shows that, you actually care enough to care that it prints the way that we think it's going to print.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that was in there. So if the authors haven't looked, you should check the documentation. It's very useful. Another thing that I found is in the documentation, there was this list about how to avoid blank pages at the back of the book. So in the printing process, there are, sometimes by the way that you guys print are going to be, or everyone prints, there are going to be extra blank pages. So you said multiples of 12 minus 1. That's the trick. So I made a spreadsheet where I listed all the multiples of 12 I could get minus 1. And I make my books fall exactly in that number. And so I don't have random blank pages. And you say, well, what do I do with all the extra pages that are otherwise blank? Well, here's a tip. So again, I don't know if you can see this on the screen. So what I do is, because there are going to be a few extra pages anyway, is I do continue the series page with a QR code. I love that. So, and it tells you, everyone knows how to use a QR code, I think, but I'm not going to assume it. So I even have directions on how to use the QR code. And here's the blurb of the next book. And then, I have a few more usually. So I'll just say, here's a different series. And
that is so smart.
And so on. So if you just have a few extra pages at the end would otherwise just be blank, and you have to print anyway, you might put something in it, and then it looks better and more professional that you don't have blank pages. So I appreciate that was listed in the documentation so I could make that happen.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, and other things. So and they were all very helpful at Bookvault, making sure that these books got printed, because we had stacks and stacks of books for me to sign, and it wasn't the easiest process, and I really appreciate that they made that out.
Oh, of course. Well, yeah, you're always welcome, and we're really happy we managed to get this off its feet. And so if you would, are you able to get any more signed copies? Are you going to do more book signings, or what's next?
Well, so right now, I'm really kind of busy. Because I have a lot of projects I need to be working on. So because of that, I probably won't be doing book signings in the immediate future. I have to think about how I'm doing the special editions and stuff, but I'm definitely always planning for special editions to be coming out, so I'm making sure all the art is ready and everything will be there for when I have them. I just can't necessarily do it because it does take a bit of time.
No, of course it takes time, the planning, everything, like you said, like the artwork, the cover work, just everything, because obviously you've got multiple projects on the side, so yeah, it takes time, but it shows that you show a lot of thought and a lot of effort and hard work has gone into these books. So we really appreciate you choosing Bookvault to help you. And yeah, one last question I was going to say is how you mentioned, obviously, you saw us at LBF and you noticed that we were print on demand. How important was the print on demand part, do you think? Or
well, I would say that I know a lot of authors similarly in my position will go and get a large print order, but that's typically like a few thousand copies or whatever to make it cost effective.
Yeah,
and I don't have any way to store that personally. I don't have any way to store. So for you guys know, I'm living in Switzerland, which, the area is not so big, the houses and buildings and apartments and whatnot. So I had to fly here to come do this. But I don't have space for storing like thousands of books. And remember, think of it this way. I just put out a series with we'll say 13 in this case, books. I don't really want to print 2,000 copies of 13 books. There is no way. I mean,
no.
That's not. So the print on demand, I think, is useful because it kind of fits into the whole indie agile. So you print when someone wants it, you can get it to them, and you don't have to deal with these cumbersome things like storing the books, printing the books. I don't even have time to package books and store them. So I think that was important for me personally. What other people say, I don't know, but for me, I just can't have a storage space and doing all of that stuff. So it makes it easier for me. And having these features and still being able to print on demand, I think is really special and important, that you can put something out there if you really want to bring your game.
Yeah.
Then bring your game.
You want to do the most, then you can.
That's what I say. I threw everything, every feature, make it as pretty as possible. All the ribbons here, also ribbons.
Yeah, we got ribbons, you got end papers,
here, everything. Yeah.
Wow. And that's why they look so beautiful. I mean, I feel like they'll look beautiful without everything, but the fact they have everything just makes them I love them. But yeah, that's all the questions for today. And I thank you so much for joining me and answering the questions. But where could they find your work if you want to shout out your website or where you can find you?
You can find my website, ellasummers.com. That's actually where most of the most complete source of information, because I try to keep my site updated. If you want to see pictures of all the books I printed here, you can go to my website. You can go to my books, the Legion of Angels page. You'll be able to find it, I'm sure. Otherwise, it's ellasummers.com and then /Legion of angels, whatever. It's easier to just find it on the site. And you can see I took tons of photos when I got the proof of all the books. So you can actually see what it looks like when you have a whole series done in special editions, if that's of interest to you.
I'm sure it is, yeah. Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you for everything, and we wish you the best for your journey.
Thanks for having me.
It's okay.